Let's make this beautiful beach scene together. If you don't know what supplies to get, there's an intro video on my channel. Check it out. Don't forget to subscribe so you can jump back right into this painting with us before you leave. This is going to be our beach down here at the bottom. The first thing we're going to do is put a light peach color at the very bottom, and then right over that, not even cleaning the brush out, just grabbing a little bit of a darker brown and making our little squiggle, whatever way we want our water to be washing off of the beach from. And you might have to go back and forth between those two sections just a little bit to get a nice soft blend, but just doing the lighter peach color at the bottom, adding a little bit of brown right above that, just enough to get our base going for where all of our sand is going to be later on, and then taking the time to squill it out as much as you want while everything is still wet. It'll give a nice blended look and kind of give that wet feeling of the water washing off of our beach. And then for the sandy part, we're going to start flicking on some paint colors. I'm going to go through those quickly, but I'm going to tell you about them. You're going to flick some brown, some black, some of that peach color, some white, and then any of the colors those mix in between, let that flick on there as well. This is still a base coat for the beachy part, so it's not going to be perfect yet. Don't overthink it when you see these specks. Just get that paint really wet and then flick them off in any order, and you can go back and forth a couple times between the brown, the black, the white, the peach, and then any combo that they make in between. Just let it happen, doing lots of flicking so you get all those nice little pieces that look like sand. And then if you run into this issue here, I actually added too much water, so I'm just taking a dry paintbrush and patting it down where it's a little bit too wet, mixing it with that white paint just to tone that down. So just softly kind of patting off that excess. Same thing if you splatter a little bit too much of any paint color, just kind of grab a dry brush and pat it down. It'll just add to that look. And then it's time to start making some waves. So grabbing a little bit of blue, green, and white mixed together, mostly blue, a little bit of white, a little bit of green, and starting about halfway through that painting, that's going to be the horizon line. So we're going to take that blue, green, and white, make the line halfway through our painting, and then as we come down here to our sandy part, we're going to add more white to get it a little bit lighter. And you're going to notice that it picks up a little bit of that wet beach color there. That's okay. In real life, you would be able to see through some of that water as it gets really thin and washes up on the shore, so that's totally fine. And then just kind of pushing up and down between the darker section we first put on and the lighter section right where it's on that beach where it's more white, and just kind of pushing back and forth, getting some motion going in our ocean, just a little bit of a wave here or there, all these different tones and textures and streaks that are just naturally going to happen as we push up and down. And you can flick in little bitty pieces to look like waves. Then jumping into the top of our painting, this is a little bit of purple and white paint, and we're going to add a lot of colors up here, so we don't need to be too precise. Just get that color on there and immediately jump into a little bit of blue and white to get the top of that painting started. Just pushing that blue and white down into that wet purple paint we just put on, going about halfway through the top of that painting, letting it be a little more blue at the top, more purple through the middle part of the top there, and then adding more color about halfway through that top part of that painting. We're going to start adding some white and pink mixed together. This is pretty light, which is white and pink, and then under that we're doing a little bit of orange and white, and we're going to keep moving down and changing our colors. We've got a lot of colors at the top, so making our orange and white here, and then we're going to be adding a little bit more pink back in because it was a little bit too light the first time. You can go back to any of these colors at any point just to blend them out. It's that purple and then blue at the very top, purple about halfway through, then our pink and white, then our orange and white, and this is yellow and white, so just kind of a nice soft gradient between all those colors, taking the time to blend it out as much as you are comfortable and happy with. And of course we can leave it a little bit streaky so we get that sunset feel. And then while everything is wet, we're going to start fanning out this yellow and white. It's coming from the very bottom middle of that top part of the painting, so like right on the horizon line, right in the middle. We're going to fan out little lines going all the way around in a circle to get those little sun beams flicking through. It's going to pick up a little bit of our wet colors that are up there with that yellow and spread them around. That's okay, just be very gentle and soft with your paintbrush strokes, and it'll give it a nice casual feel to that sunset. It'll pull those colors in and out how you want them to be and make it look like a very natural sunset look. And then just going back in To accentuate all of those sunbeams, this is just orange and white we're going in with. You can see it's a little bit darker than what we originally put on there. It's okay to have a little bit of yellow mixed in as well. We're going a little bit darker, but it's going to pick up all of these background colors that are still wet and lighten itself up. If your background had time to dry, just add a little bit more white and get it a little bit lighter. And just kind of getting those side to side looks, going down here closer to the horizon line, and then again going around in those little beams in that circular streaking motion, just fanning everything out. I say circular, you're putting them up as if they're following a circular shape around, but everything is straight lines. Might be a little confusing that way, but I think you've got it. Here in the middle, this is just another little bit of that white and yellow, again pushing it out in a fanning motion, streaking it all around in different directions, going up into the sides and a little bit diagonal going up and diagonal going up the other way. Just kind of pushing in more of that light, beaming yellow and white color. It's going to be getting lighter and lighter as we go because we're layering on all those colors. So the more we do this, the more light it's going to be. It'll be really white or light as well if you let these layers dry in between doing them. But it's okay to go in wet. This is all going on while it's still wet. So if it picks up a little bit of those background colors as it goes in, that's totally fine. Then putting on a small little circle in the middle of those beams using some white, and then it's picked up a little bit of yellow. We're going to take that same exact white and start bouncing in some little waves. These are just little tiny dashes, side to side, light little motions, kind of flicking in really tiny streaks off in the distance. And then we're going to move these little shapes into more squiggles and like ovular shapes that are pulling out here as we get a little bit closer towards us, because those are going to be bigger shapes as we get towards the front. And we can bring in any of our sky colors into our water using those same motions, so kind of mimicking a reflection where, since there's purple and blue at the top, we do a little bit of purple and blue in the bottom of the ocean, and then we can get a little bit more yellow and orange and white as we get closer to the top of the water or towards that setting sun, hitting a little bit of pink in the middle here. These are just little squiggly shapes, kind of like little half ovals or half circles or whole circles or whole ovals. Of course, if we get a little bit too excited and too colorful in the water, we can always tone it down by throwing a little bit of white on top of this, and then just let it dry before you go back in with any of the blue colors if that is needed, but usually white will take care of that. Here we are at the top of the water, of course reflecting the orange and yellow now that is closest to the far side of the water in the top, so right on that horizon line. Keeping everything a little bit more flat and a little bit closer together as we are off of the distance there of the water, because of course those are going to be more compact as they get further away from us being able to see them. Once we have all of those colors on our water that are reflecting off of our sun, we're going to jump back up here now that everything is nice and dry, and we're going to reflect in a little bit more white. This doesn't have any colors mixed in with it, just going in with some plain white, so it'll get pretty light pretty quickly. Be very gentle with this. Of course, you can use a smaller paintbrush than what I have done here. I committed to using a very large filbert paintbrush for this entire painting, which may not have been the best idea, but you can of course use something a little bit smaller, maybe a rounder brush or a flatter brush, or even just a smaller filbert brush. But grabbing that plain white, jumping up into the sky, and reflecting out some more light coming from where that sun is about to be. Just gently pressing that in there. The more you press it in, the more it's going to blend. The more you just put it on and leave it alone, the more it is going to stay nice and light and white. And of course, getting those little side-to-side lines below where that sun is actually going to be. And then just pushing everything out, getting a little bit more water and paint, and blending it as much as needed. If your paint behind it is still wet or is picking it up, that's still okay. Of course, if you want it lighter, let it dry before you go back in there. This is all about layering on this step. It's just a lot of white going back into that same motion over and over again and layering it on there until you get it to your happy place. Of course, zigzagging it in a little bit sideways with some little tiny lines or dots to be some reflections of the sky or some clouds. Then using the back of that paintbrush, you can just grab a dot of some white and a dot of some yellow, and you don't even have to mix them together. You can just go right in with a little tiny circle from the back of that brush to be the sun. And then of course take that same yellow and white we just did and throw a little bit more of those fanned out streaks on there. This isn't very well blended in there. It's mostly just thrown on top and left alone. So just throw that on there, get it to your happy place, and when you love it, leave it. This is looking so fantastic. I'm very proud of you. Jumping back into the bottom, we're going to make the sand actually look like sand, and all we're going to do that is put a very light layer of the peach over the peach and the brown over the brown. This isn't super watered down or it would drip off the painting, but it is very thin, and you can even mix the brown with some peach to make it a little bit lighter. We want it to be thin so you can see all those little speckles we put on there through and get all that wonderful sand texture. And then we're just going to put the peach over the peach, the brown over the brown. Blend it as much as you need to. I leave it pretty separated here so that we get that nice water line where the water's pulling down from. And then of course for your water line, this is just a little bit of plain white. You're going to lightly tap onto it, and you can see here even tapping a little bit separated below it and then above it will make it start to look like an actual wave, and just gently blend out those white taps into the water. So you just gently tap right along the edge of the water, or even a little bit onto the sand, and then you can see here as we're pushing out, it is doing littler and littler streaks that aren't as thick with the white paint. It's still just plain white paint going on there, but it gets a little bit thinner sometimes, a little bit thicker other times, and we like that. You just kind of tap it around and blend it occasionally, and then just let it sit on other times without blending it. Same thing even off in the distance, it's just light little taps to get some little waves in the ocean. And then following that same motion we did earlier with our colorful streaks, we're going to do it with this white where you do like little ovular things. Here you go. This is a better little example of the kind of pushing back of that white waterline edge, just a light little blend or push into that water to make it look like it is actually a way of pushing back at you. We could even call it a day here because this looks fantastic, but I'm feeling a lot of motion in my ocean, so I'm really going to get wavy here, and I'm going to start tapping around quite a few of those white little areas where the water is splashing up, and then gently pressing it out where it is not as thick with the white paint. It's still just plain white paint, but just kind of smoothing it to where it's a little bit thinner. This is going to be a whole lot of that, tapping in some plain white a little bit thicker sometimes to make little waves, and then streaking it out with a thinner amount and a lighter touch to get those little ovular shapes where all the water is pulling apart. And then if it gets a little bit too light, we can always go back in with some more color, either the blue color for the water or the reflection colors from the sky. Just enjoy putting a little bit of motion in your ocean. Your beach looks fantastic. You've done an amazing job. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for stopping by. Go hang this in your kitchen right next to your grandma's china set where it will look amazing forever. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you back here soon.